Do you like conversation on a variety of topics? Feel like no one wants to talk about the things that interest you? Tired of only hearing the same political, sports, or catastrophe talk? Yeah, we feel that way too. Join two high-functioning geeks as they discuss just about anything under the sun. We can't tell you what we'll be talking about each week because we don't know where our brains will take us. It will be an interesting conversation though, so hang on and join us. Here comes the relentless geekery.
Is that
Sorry.
One of the overall joys of the Mac platform nowadays is that it really integrates well, so that I can be working on something on my desktop and then it can be easily available on my laptop without having to save a file somewhere, make sure that it's shareable,
Right.
download the link, all that kind of stuff. So I love that little, what they call it, not compatibility, integration, whatever. They have a nice, of course, near copyrighted term, just like they try to copyright the term Windows. But okay.
Well, that's
Good
something
morning,
to talk
Colin.
about. Hey, Colin.
Welcome to the fun.
Hi.
There we go.
Fun
Hi,
and
can you guys
frivolity.
hear and see me okay?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
All right.
So we got our third guest on, as Alan pointed out, our third esteemed
Woo!
guest.
Exactly. Yay. Exactly.
My son Colin, and he's the geek of the week because he works at a comic book store, which is like the dream job for any 20-year-old, right?
Exactly that. Either that or pinball testing back in the old days.
Pinball.
So,
By the way, Alan, side note, before I forget,
yes.
I was at the Little Red Wagon, which is a really cool toy store in the area.
Okay.
They had a cardboard kit you put together. It's a pinball machine, working pinball machine. It's all punched.
pretty
You just
cool.
fold it and put it together, and then you have a cardboard working pinball machine.
Wow. I was thinking the other day, I haven't got a 3D printer yet, but it's literally like Christmas money is going to do that.
Same
And
here.
one of the joys of Christmas there's so many puzzles that I mangled a piece and I want to recreate,
Right.
and I'm talking not jigsaw puzzles, but like Soma and Rubik's Cube and those kinds of things. And it used to be that you just kind of said goodbye and put it in the box and never played with it again. But now I have a thing called Screw Loose, where it's a big nut and screw, and there's a maze on the inside of the shaft of the screw that you can't see because you're working the nut over it. It's got a little nub on the nut that is what tracks the path through it. Well, if someone decided that they were going to play with it and they forced it and they snapped the nub off, so now you know how you solve the maze? Zoop, zoop, you just move the nut up and down. Now I can actually recreate that particular thing and any number of other things. So just that, to go back to what you were saying, it's not only for puzzles, it's the the possibilities of being able to get to something that I thought was a lost cause is really nice.
We'll have to get our printers and talk about that. I'll add it to the list.
Exactly.
So, but Colin's on here. We're talking about other stuff. We don't ever do that. No.
Exactly.
But Colin, besides working at the store, you just went to C2E2. So tell everybody what C2E2 is and tell us some of the cool things. And we'll probably have plenty to interrupt you with.
Oh, sure. So C2E2 stands for Chicago Comic and Entertainment Expo. And it is one of the largest comic cons in the country. I look at it as the largest con that is still about mostly comics, because you look at San Diego and you look at New York, the two actually largest cons, and they're both very much focused on the movies and the shows now.
Absolutely.
Like you look at the guest list, and sure, Jim Lee shows up at both every year, but 90% of it is TV and movie people.
Exactly. The cast of Supernatural, the cast of the next Star Wars installment.
Yeah.
Whatever else it might be.
We saw the
fan.
Avengers trailer at New York Comic Con the year we went the first
Okay.
time.
Yeah, and I don't know, when I go to a Comic Con, I want comic stuff. And so C2E2 was always kind of at the top of my list to visit. I remember growing up starting with the New 52 Batman stuff. They had DC would run ads around October every year for Chicago, and they would have a list of every guest that did DC Comics at the time.
Right.
And I was always looking, and I'm like, oh my God, those are my favorite creators. This has got to be like comic book mecca.
Exactly. It used to be that way at Comic Cons, that each of the major publishers would actually have like a little city. They'd have 10 booths that they grouped together into they had their own big Quonset hut, and they gathered all their people there, and that's where you'd go and meet everybody. You know what I mean? It wasn't individuals on Artist Alley and stuff like that. It was the entire Dark Force staff, or Marvel, or DC, or Image, or whoever it was at the time, and that was wonderful. So Chicago still does that. They have a big presence from major publishers, I guess, and stuff like that.
Yes. This year and last year, well, the last time they did it was 2020 March.
Pre-COVID.
Yeah. And those two, Marvel and DC weren't there, and they normally are. But so like some more minor publishers got their spot, which I thought was kind of cool.
Okay.
Aftershock, AWA, and SourcePoint Press, which is actually Ohio based. They're local. They're
I didn't
from
know that.
Canton.
Okay.
They all kind of got the space up front that Marvel and DC normally had,
Yeah.
which I thought was really neat. Like Aftershock brought every comic they've ever published all there, even out of print stuff. And I was kind of going a little crazy. I was trying not to buy trades, but I was like, oh, I want some of these.
Right. If you're trying to get current and you don't want to find every one of the last 36 issues, the trades are the way to go for filling. Okay, exactly.
So yeah, it was cool. It was the convention's massive. I only got to see the show floor, but there were 2 other floors of things going on. They had 6 different like event hall rooms that they were doing panels and talks and discussions in, and then they had like kind of like a party hall underneath the show floor where like people would go and play like D&D and gaming, and then in the evening after the show floors closed, they would do raves and like
That's cool.
hangouts and club stuff.
So did you get to any of the talks or anything? Because this
Oh
sounds
God, no!
I
I had to work the whole time, you know, and when I wasn't working, I wanted to spend money.
So this sounds a lot like an RG, you know.
It kind of is. You know, it's an RG if there also was, you know, 300 comic book shops right in the same area.
Which sounds like a great RG.
I agree.
Yes. I'll tell you, those, I loved going to those. I always went to, you know, Chicago Comic-Con before Wizard World bought it. And I guess this is a reply to that it's not what Wizard World has become. As you said, it's kind of celebrity based. And what are the professional wrestlers doing here? You know, that kind of stuff.
They had wrestlers there too. And there were some celebrities, like Hayden Christensen was there. Okay. And the guy who was the one big bad in Breaking Bad, and he also is in The Mandalorian. He's the Moff Gideon.
There we go. Exactly. It's a Hispanic gentleman. What's his name?
Yeah.
Really good. He's got that great, like, you don't know when he's going to break into violence. He's very calm, and he like orders people's deaths as if he's ordering, you know, a burrito or something like that. So.
Yeah. He's great, but they were like the 2 big movie people, and then there were some more. There were a bunch of voice actors and stuff, but really the focus was put on Artist Alley with the comic book creators. Nice. And there was a great lineup this year. I was going nuts. Tim Seeley was there, Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti.
Exactly. Often collaborate, exactly.
Well, they're husband and wife.
Oh, honestly, I never knew that.
Trivia question.
Really? That's wild. I guess a deeper collaboration than I knew.
Yes. Jenny Friesian, who was really nice. She had like this bright, like electric purple hair. I could describe it as. It was really cool. Ryan Parrott and Kyle Higgins, who are best known for their Power Rangers stuff, and they're creating a superhero universe for Image. And I was kind of losing my mind about that. Charles Sewell, one of my favorite writers. Rob Liefeld was there, but I didn't really care.
It's funny. He made a big contribution, but his time is kind of past. And he also, from, I don't know, whatever the various different ways the comic book people gather to communicate, he has not always been pleasant. And sometimes, no matter how good your work is, that can turn the crowd against you. You know what I mean? If you're just a little bit too arrogant or too much of a jerk or whatever else it might be, and his reputation is not good. He really might be a really nice guy in person, but he's put things in print to read forever that really are not good.
Yeah.
So, oh well. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I am not much of a fan of his art,
Okay.
and I have a habit at my store of kind of trash talking him a little bit because it's fun.
Okay.
The whole no feet thing and everything.
Right.
But
I do appreciate
I
it when a comic book is still like 22 pages of story and art, not 4 different 2-page splashes. So it's like a poster book instead, because he was well known for that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Just all of a sudden, and they were
There was
beautiful pages usually, but they were like, wow, this isn't advancing the plot enough. Oh well.
but I
Sorry,
had to
Rob.
watch
Sorry.
I had to watch what I said because he's known for getting people kicked out of conventions if they say anything negative about his stuff.
Who has the power to do that? Go to hell,
I have no
Rob.
idea.
You know,
Yeah.
okay.
It's a free country. Just don't express your opinion
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, it's
Dude,
not like you stalked him or something ridiculous, you know.
No,
Oh,
I just stayed
okay.
away because I would have a hard time not being a smart ass.
Got it. Okay.
But the Artist Alley was wild. It was
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, you guys go ahead. I got to grab this. Sorry.
okay. It was literally 26 rows A to Z with like a dozen people in each row. And not everyone was like top level comic book creator. There were a lot of indie people there too.
Yes.
My dad's friend Tom Zoller, who's done some art for him, he's commissioned him a few times, was there.
We used to see him at pub quiz like every month, you know.
Yeah.
Exactly. So okay.
Yeah, so it was cool. It was a really nice wide range of creators, and they did a good job of not being like, okay, all the AAAs are here, and then the rest of it's all everyone
Here's the
else.
the JV squad or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Exactly.
It was all intermixed, like the heavy hitters like Liefeld and Amanda Conder and Palamati, they were up in the A category, but everyone else was mixed in. Tim Seeley was in like T or something. So like it was a good mix of top level comic creators and other indie artists, which I think was really cool.
Yeah. Artist Alley is always a very dangerous place for me because I tend to like go down the line and say, what are you working on? And sure, I'll buy a copy. And you do that from A to Z. And all of a sudden you've got, plastic bags where the plastic is cutting into your fingers because they're too heavy and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
I really like seeing people's new work, supporting people that are giving things a try, so and especially then when you see them year after year, and I'm recognizable enough, they don't always remember me by name, but they'll be like, hey, and you start to have a nice rapport with catching up on, okay, here's the next. That's how we got to know Ted Sikora, was that I discovered Apama early and didn't just like let him peddle his wares to me. We actually had a conversation about, wow, the artwork is a lot like John Buscema, and if anything, we try to have a conversation where when you show that you know a little bit of what's going on, that you're not just new to the thing, but that you've been around for a while, and you ask intelligent questions, you give them a chance to talk about what they love about the field and stuff like that. I've had really nice conversations with people that we didn't know each other from Adam, but immediately you're both fans. And if you do it that way, that it's not just please sign this so I can put it on eBay, but tell me more about what music you listen to while you're working. You take it to a different level, and then they kind of don't want you to leave because so many other interactions are handshake, sign this. It's much more shallow, if you will. So,
and that's what I told the kids when we went to New York. I did get a thing to see Stan Lee because Colin was 12. He was excited, Sure. But I mean, it was like $150. We stood in line for how long, Colin? Like 2 hours. And, and it was shuffle, and literally there was like the bodyguard you had to hand the book to, and then you shuffled to the right in front of Stan, and Stan's signing, never even looks up. Colin's like, oh my gosh, I love you, I love to meet you. The kid's like, great, kid. And they shuffle. Colin's still kind of like, this is great, take the book and walk away. Nobody remembered it, but we got to meet, and I've mentioned this before, Peter Mayhew, Chewbacca. And we talked to him for like 20 minutes, him and his wife. His wife's like as tall as Colleen, and he's like 6 inches taller than you. So, I mean,
sitting down, he was taller than me when I was 12.
That's funny. Well, Stephen, you and I have talked about this before. Maybe you had some of this, Colin. Like, because I tend to not only like the most popular stuff, but I like the odd stuff. Sometimes, like, while everybody is over visiting with Hayden Christensen or something like that, you get a chance to talk to, and going back into the past here, I was there with Gene Colin was there, and nobody was either recognizing him or they like, how can you not? This guy, like,
Oh my
he did
God.
Iron Man, he did Daredevil, he did so much great
Tomb of
work.
Dracula.
Tomb of Dracula, absolutely. And I loved the fact that maybe, if nobody recognizes Martin Nodell, creator of Green Lantern,
Yeah.
I get to talk to him for a half an hour instead of the just shuffle along, thank you, I love your work type thing. So I hope you had some of those experiences as well.
I got to meet so most of the creators that I got stuff signed from, it was a little too busy and I was kind of rushing around because I only had an hour or two to look around and do stuff
and then go back.
Right. But Jim Calafiore, he's a fairly obscure artist. He's done a lot of stuff, but a lot of it's like fill-in issues for various things.
Interesting.
I love his work because he did with Charles Sewell run on Red Lanterns, specifically the run when Guy Gardner and Supergirl were Red Lanterns. And that run, I think, is one of the most underrated runs I've ever read. I love it.
Very good.
To bits. And Calafiore did like the back half of the series, the art for it. And so I was getting stuff signed, and he's like, no one ever talks about Red Lanterns. And I'm like, it's one of my favorite series of all time. And he's like, it was one of the most fun things I've ever done. I am so glad someone's read it. And I ended up buying a beautiful splash page that he did for the series. And I walked in the con wanting to buy a page, ended up walking out with 2 big spreads and a single page. So I think I made out that way. But we talked for about 10 minutes about the run, and he gave me his email and he's like, hey, I want you to send me a picture of your Green Lantern collection.
Very
so
cool.
I was like, oh yeah.
And that's it. Like you said, now he's made that connection. So the next con, it's this is getting a little off the topic, but I've told the kids, don't close doors and do things like this, because now Colin can send those pictures and he has a dialogue with this guy. And if he's like, hey, I need some advice, and you'll get it. It's those little things. And when he says, hey, I just wrote this comic, I'm not looking to sell it. I'm not looking for you to tell me what to do. I just thought I'd send it to you because I like you. And that's what you did, Colin, with your cryptid stuff. You just made those lists. And suddenly he was being asked to talk places, and it led to other things. There's my rant. It goes along with my talk I've been doing. I can't help it. Sorry.
No, that's great. In fact, I really do agree with that. Now that I've spoken at a couple of Comic-Cons, it's really cool when you have a little speaker badge and then they say, what are you talking about? And so it'll be like, well, I'm going to talk about, female archetypes in comic books or Mad Magazine. And I go, I love Mad Magazine. And then you've got a nice opening. And I've never been in the field, but I know a lot about this from having loved them for 60 years. And so it's very cool that by being someone that is doing something peripheral to the field, at least now you kind of have a little bit of I'm with you instead of I'm only on the outside. And I don't know, who was it? Doesn't matter. That actually had come to see one of my talks, and he very nicely commented, you really know your stuff, why aren't you doing this more? It's like, well, I'm kind of just breaking it in. I haven't been doing it at Comic-Cons because Comic-Cons stopped for a while. Anyway, it's when I get a chance, like I said, this podcast is a little bit about name dropping. I've had wonderful conversations with Jim Steranko and Jack Kirby and like giants in the field because of a little bit of what I talked about. When you say, like Colin said, everybody knows about Steranko's work on Agents of
Nick
S.H.I.E.L.D.
Fury and the
Nick
cover
Fury,
of Hulk.
exactly that. All those incredible.
He did that? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
sorry, I had to make your.
When you say he actually did a couple issues of X-Men, like before Neil Adams took over, and so it's kind of cool and then when you say, well, I really love those too, and they will often say, oh, I loved doing that. I kind of did a favor for a friend because they were between artist-writer teams, and so they said, go wild, do whatever you want. And it's very cool to be able to drop that little obscure reference, because that way they know that you really. So, for instance, when you for the listeners, the Red Lanterns are cool because everybody knows about Green Lantern. At one point, the mighty minds at DC said, there's a whole Roy G. Biv spectrum of different colors that there probably should be. Green Lanterns and yellow lanterns and blue and all that kind of stuff, and they kind of assigned them to various different emotionalities, right? So the Red Lanterns are all about, thank you, Pook, all about rage, and so that's one of the reason that's cool is all the superheroes that have to continually control themselves because they're too powerful and could really bust things up if they lose it. Well, you named a couple that if Supergirl kind of goes mad, it's not good for the rest of the universe. And anyway, you know what I mean? So
Right.
it's cool when you get to tap into why they loved working on what they did, that it wasn't just, hey, it was a job and I got my paycheck, but they are also big Green Lantern fans. They want to see your collection. That's a really cool catch, what I mean? So,
it's also, you start finding out the ones that really are fans and love it and are an artist and able to get into it in that way, but still are fanboys, and the ones that, like you said, just do it for the job. Because
right.
You'll talk to them and like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I haven't really read any of that, but I do my pictures. You want something signed? Okay, don't talk to me anymore. And you get those, and it's like, oh, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
I'll tell you, there's some people that are really wonderful at conventions. George Perez is now ailing. He's got, I think, pancreatic cancer, and we're not going to have him for much longer. I remember him at being at cons where he's a very quick artist, but perfect. And so everybody would like, hey, could you draw this? And he's drawn everybody because he did those big like Avengers, JLA crossover issues and stuff. And there's any number of times where someone would say, hey, could you draw like Ghost Rider? And he'd be like, well, I never drew him, but he'd do a perfect Ghost Rider because he just had this encyclopedic comic book mind of he knew everything.
Right.
So I that's another, especially for writers, it's often a more like a scholarly discussion because you're kind of talking about the act of writing and stuff like that. But artists are continually sketching and showing off a little bit. It's very cool to see someone be able to do a perfect Nick Fury just sitting down there and hands it to you. And of course, some people started to charge for them. And that's, I don't know, I am from the old days when it was, thank you for being at the Comic-Con. I'm happy to have you as a fan. Here's a free sketch, instead of $20 and $50 and $100. And it's become, in some cases, quite mercenary. I'm not sure,
I will say, though, a lot of those people then who would get it would then turn around and sell it themselves. And, with the artists kind of getting screwed by the big companies for kind of the rights of what they've done. I think charging for a quick sketch, I really don't ever have an issue with it.
Yeah,
it's there's some of them though, like that Captain America movie from the 70s or whatever. that the actor was at a Comic-Con. Obviously nobody recognized him because nobody remembered that movie from 50 years ago. And he's there, and I'm walking by and I'm looking like, Captain America, who's this? He's like, hey, you want to come and talk to me? There's free. And I'm like, okay, yeah, how you doing? He goes, well, it's $50. Well, screw that. I don't even know who you are.
Oh boy.
And they stuck him at that Comic-Con right next to one of the Golden Age artists who did Captain America. He did a lot of the finishes. And I'm like, why?
Yeah,
there's a link of some kind. Okay.
So Colin, you got some really cool books in your hand while you were there. Talk about that. Here you go, Alan.
So Friday, Thursday, the first day we were there, the day we were setting up. We got the booth mostly put together, and then my boss was like, I just have to put the wall books back up and figure it out. And he's like, that's a one-person job. If you want to look around, you're more than welcome. And I'm like, okay, bye.
Exactly.
And I zipped away, and I was walking around. And so I came into the con with the intention of only buying Green Lantern stuff. I wanted to get a page. I wanted to fill a couple holes of my keys. And I wanted to find a low-grade, affordable Golden Age Green Lantern issue.
Okay.
I accomplished most of those goals. So I was looking at the booths that, they had boxes of stuff that I could afford, but they also had, comics that were several $1,000s or more.
Up on the wall. Exactly. Okay.
Right. Well, I got to see a .5 complete, but completely detached and everything copy of Detective Comics 27.
Fantastic. Origin of Batman. Exactly. Wow.
I'd never gotten to see that before. I was really excited about that.
Very cool.
And
then that one sold, didn't it, Colin? Right after C2E2?
That one did not. No,
Oh, okay.
So one of the other booths that I saw, they had in the display case, and I'm probably forgetting some, the big like 8-foot long display case that said on auction at our website here. 7.0, the highest graded ever, Superman #1, which was the one that sold at during the con, like the auction ended. It went for 2.65 million.
Wow.
Captain America Comics #1 at a 3.5. Okay. They had an Action 1 at a 2.5 restored. Which I'd not seen any of those books before either.
Right, physically,
so I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, within touching distance. That's very cool.
Right.
Exactly.
Wiz Comics 2/1, it's complicated with that. First Shazam. Detective Comics 29, which is the third Batman. They had that at a 6, which is insane grading wise. And for those of you listening that don't know, comic grading, you get them in these big plastic slabs, and they're graded on a scale of 1 to 10. 0.5 to 10.
0 to 10, if you will. Yeah.
Right. 9, 8 being the most reasonable that you can get with a modern book at perfect condition. Right. 9.9s and 10s exist, but they're really rare, even with brand new books right off the press.
Right.
So seeing some of these old comics at crazy grades still,
right. And the better condition they are, the more valuable they are, especially anything that's old that has survived 50, 60, 70 years and somehow not been turned into a placemat, not, had the dog eat it or something like that, so, okay.
The coolest book for me that I saw was at the booth with all these crazy ones. The guy was really nice. We were chatting for a few minutes about stuff. He's like, oh, well, what do you collect? And I'm like, Green Lantern, wearing a Green Lantern hat and a Green Lantern mask and a Green Lantern shirt with a Green Lantern ring on. I'm like, I was really trying to convey what I was into there.
Exactly. What's your guess?
But I'm like, Green Lantern. He's like, oh, well, I have 1, 2, and 3. And I'm like, oh, cool. I was thinking he was talking about the Silver Age volume with Hal Jordan. No, he had 1, 2, and 3 of the Golden Age stuff, which was Alan Scott from the 40s. And he's like, you want to see him? And I'm like, yes. So he brought him out, and I'm looking, I'm like, oh my God. And he's like, you want to hold the #1?
Isn't that a weird thing? But yes, it's like, I promise not to spontaneously vomit on it in excitement.
Right. Well, it was in 2 bags and boards, and then a thicker Mylar thing, and then in a top loader. So it was protected. There was like 1.5 inches of plastic between me and that comic.
Right.
But I was holding it, and he's like, you know what? Give me your phone. I'll take a picture of you with it. I'm like, okay. So I have a picture of me holding it right next to my face. With a massive smile that's hidden by my mask. But that was really cool. Yeah. No one had an All-American 16, which is the first appearance of Alan Scott, the original Green Lantern.
Scott is exactly the origin.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's only, I think, 30 known in existence. So that was a bit of a long shot.
Yeah, that is one of the cool things about, again, for those who aren't necessarily comic book collectors, there's grading services now that do this verified grading so that everybody can really agree this is the condition that it's in and therefore this is the value. And one of the things that they've had come out of the data they collect is, well, these are the books that are really not only valuable because of condition, because of rarity. Like if we know that there's only 30, there was things back then were in the print runs of the hundreds of thousands, but they got chewed up in the paper drives. They were read by kids, and kids aren't gentle necessarily. And so to find out that there really are only 30 copies out there, and like you're saying, this 7.0 is the best known existing copy. I don't know, people nowadays in this world of easy copying of everything digital, to go back to Adams and to go back to there's really provable scarcity, that's still a very interesting thought for people to get their minds around, that it's not custom, but it sure is scarce. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's so.
It felt like I was going through a museum. I was seeing all these crazy pieces of comic book history everywhere. The other cool thing is there were a couple people that had pages of original artwork that's all they dealt. So there was one place, it's called Anthony's Comic Art and Rare Comics or something like that.
Okay.
They had easily 1,000 binders of comic art,
Wow.
ranging from like the 50s to now.
Okay. There
It
was
was
a time when that
amazing.
wasn't hard to find that stuff. So if you were into that early, you really could accumulate that incredible collection just by going to a con and saying, I don't know. So how did they used to work it? Certain publishers they held on to the art, others returned it to the artist. And so artists would be selling their own stuff at cons for like $5 a page or something like that. That was the way of getting a little bit more money. Maybe I underguess. I don't think it was ever 5, but 10, 20, 50, 100 compared to what it's worth nowadays was still an incredible bargain to be able to buy into something that now has become more rare. And especially the original art really is a oneer. This is the page that this guy drew that became the splash page for Fantastic Four number 48 or something like that. That like, wow.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, Fantastic Four number 48 is the coming of Galactus, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And so, that's one of those things that everybody wants that image because Kirby did so many great iconic images, and to have like this is the what do they call it back then? Not bristlepboard, whatever it was. It's bigger than a comic book page. It usually was, like the blue and white little squares around it, however they worked. It's cool to get that insight into what they did to make it then become a comic book and like penciled instead of ink, so you can really see this is what came out of Jack Kirby's head. That's just amazing. So anyway,
I got to see an actual Kirby page while I was there.
That's very cool.
Wow. I didn't get to look at it for super long because it was one of those booths that they had like 3 binders of art and that was it, and it was all stuff in the tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
They were nice enough to let this kid look through them.
Right.
But there were actual customers coming and looking at stuff, and I'm like, okay, I probably should walk away. But it was a page from Hunger Dogs, which was Kirby's big finale of his Fourth World Saga.
Exactly.
And it was really cool. It had some of the minions of Darkseid on it, and then I think it was the page when the building collapses on Orion right at the beginning of the story.
Okay.
So it was really cool, and it's an especially cool page because this was in the 80s, right at the end of Kirby's time as a main artist on comics.
Right.
After that, he really just kind of did concepts and stuff. Every once in a while, he'd do something.
Right.
But this was something that not only did he pencil himself, but he inked himself too, which was rare. Oftentimes, Kirby would pump them out so fast, he would have to have 2 or 3 inkers just to get the book done.
That's right. Like Mike Royer, there were certain people that really worked a lot with him.
Vince Coletta did a lot of the stuff in the late
exactly.
60s and 70s, and I don't like his inks.
Okay.
They're too thin, and he would cut out stuff. He would lose a lot of the detail that Kirby would put in.
Okay.
There was actually this project going on right now. Some people have Coletta inked Kirby pages. And what they're doing is they're using microscopes and kind of, I want to say X-ray, but I don't think it's actually X-ray technology to try to find the erased pencil marks to try to figure out what Kirby put there that Coletta skipped.
See, I know that they've done that for like famous paintings. When they find out that this fresco is falling apart and they want to fix it, recreate it, they do all that X-ray. Tomography is not quite the right word, but you know what I mean? The spectral analysis and the fact that it's not only for Rembrandt paintings, but for comic book pages is a really cool thing that the people really want to see what was going on with Kirby, that sometimes his work was bettered, most often worsened by whoever his inker was. So that's very cool.
And I love that they're using the tech nowadays to do that type of stuff. It's like those TV shows where they drain the ocean and things that used to be there archaeologically, and they recreate it, and you look at it through AR and you can see it. I love that stuff.
Exactly. So
my favorite page that I did see though was the cover for Green Lantern 56 from the Silver Age. It was a Gil Kane cover, and it still had the plastic stuff they used for the letters and everything. So like it had the DC logo
and tone for various different things, and that oh my god, okay. And so is anybody on the cover leaning back so you can look up his nostrils? Because that's my characteristic thing about Gil Kane art, is how many guys wear the nostril shot.
No, it was there was this big purple space monster that was like grappling with Hal Jordan on the cover. That's what it was.
Okay.
But he had a tentacle really up his nostril.
No, but it was really cool. And I was like, can I just look at it closer? Because it was on the wall. And the lady that was helping me, because that was the place that I bought the couple pages I have. The lady that was helping me was like, yeah, it's free to look. And I'm like, okay.
Very cool.
So yeah, that was really interesting. It was a great time. I ended up finding a good chunk of the Green Lantern key issues I needed, which I'm very glad for. I got the first Guy Gardner, which is issue 59 of Green Lantern, which is a book that's going crazy right now because of the TV show. I got the first Silver Age appearance of Alan Scott, which is something that I was really hunting for because it's also going to go crazy because of the TV show.
Yeah,
that's Showcase 55. First Black Hand, Green Lantern 29. So I was really I'm only missing 4 keys now, and then I'll have every key of Green Lantern since the Silver Age.
That's fantastic. I mean, because I was buying all along, I don't know that I actually had to fill in my collection that much since like the mid 70s. That's not true. I was buying then from people. I always got everything current, but already back then I was filling in all the Daredevils I had missed, all the Thors, all the X-Men, and I probably was more of a Marvel than a DC fan in terms of wanting to go back and fill things in. But man, how many Comic-Cons, and I don't know, nowadays you don't do it on paper, but I used to have this little list that was, all my wants. And of course it got folded and put into my pocket so many times that it starts to fray at the folds, you know what I mean? So, but I'd go through the boxes and pull things out. It might be that now once you're looking for keys, you're not necessarily hunting through boxes, you're looking at the walls, you're looking at very select things. And so it's not so much the treasure hunt in terms of finding them, it's more like, wow, this is money, am I going to invest in them? So good for you, man. That's really cool. Okay.
I actually I wrote out because I didn't know how well the internet was going to be at the con, so I had a little note that I wrote every key I was missing and the market price for each grade. So I would be in there prepared, and I wouldn't be like, oh, I don't remember if that's a fair price for it or not. I would be able to tell and be able to negotiate easier.
I had exactly the same thing. What back then there was the overstreet comic book price
right.
There wasn't but I remember that was, boy, I didn't grow up in Morocco, and so I didn't learn about how to haggle at a bazaar. Where did I learn to haggle? At a Comic-Con, where you'd be like, okay, yeah, there's like 4 things I want to buy, and the total is like $56. Can we bring it down to 50? And how many times the guy was like, sure. It's like, wow, I could just ask and he gives me $6, kind of thing. It was the first time I felt kind of like an adult, you know what I mean?
I still don't feel like that most of the time.
What's fun is when I'm trying to do the haggling, if I got the exhibitor badge that I did on, they oftentimes would give me a little bit more of a break.
Nice.
Which was nice.
Cool. Yeah, doesn't that sound like some sort of game, where you have your certain comics and what other people want and you're haggling and trading money? I mean, it sounds like a game we'd play.
Exactly. I know there's been times, but maybe like that, to gamify it, it was like, I'm getting ready to buy something and I'm about to haggle with the guy. And then somebody next to me says, if he doesn't buy it, I'll take it. And then it's like, well, I guess I don't have much bargaining room now.
Yeah.
This guy's ready to snipe me, right here, physically.
He's probably a plant. He just sits around every time someone wants to haggle. He goes up and says that.
I honestly, I never thought of that. That's probably what it was, that he had a troll. That's very funny.
See, I hate haggling. It's just my DNA, my upbringing. You know, my mother would never make it in any of those Middle Eastern bazaars. But I'm like, oh, you want that much? Okay, here you go. I'm you know, it's so hard for me to haggle.
Honestly, it wasn't easy. It was just kind of an experiment. When it worked, then it encourages it. But you know where I don't haggle? Like Colin and I have been, maybe we went on a cruise and got off at Cozumel, and everybody else was bargaining. And it's like, man, if there's anybody that needs money more than I do, it's these folks. I'll buy the t-shirt for what your asking price is. I'll buy the little knickknack. It just didn't occur to me to try to get them down when it's like, that's less food for their kids. No, here, have more food. So I'm sure that's a very like white Western attitude. And yet that's how I feel, is that I've been blessed with having enough money to go on a cruise. Why am I trying to get these guys down?
And I'm not saying this is across the board, not saying it's everybody. You know, I know there are issues and there are differences in countries. I've been on a ship. I worked and, you know, I was there at the bars that were run that, you know, so I understand all of that. But the cool thing with today's world is a lot of those people, they do that. It's a side hustle because they go home and they run 3 businesses off their phone and they do it while sitting there waiting for somebody to buy a conch shell. So I'm not saying it's everybody. And I know there's some that still do it and struggle just to make a little money, but there's a big change in the world with some of those things.
Yeah. So I know I've had people I didn't mind haggling with because they seemed shady. You know what I mean? When someone is asking too much for like, a conch shouldn't cost that much. How about if I offer half that, because he has it marked up because he knows people are going to try to haggle him down. So you just kind of play the game by the rules instead of being the idiot, the victim that's waiting to be fleeced. Anyway, so anybody that you were surprised to see there? You know what I mean, Colin? Was there any? I imagine that the build up to it is they publish those big artist lists and you know who you're wanting to seek out. Was there anybody that was like, oh, I didn't know you were working on this now or working for a different company now? Any big surprises?
I think the biggest surprise was that Jenny Frisian was there, because C2E2, their website was having trouble before the show. So it wasn't completely updated and it wasn't completely accurate and everything. So that made it really difficult trying to bring stuff to get signed. And their guest list was different from the Artist Alley list, because I think what the guests were people they specifically asked to come, and people like if they happened to have a booth in Artist Alley, they were given that instead of purchasing it. Whereas the Artist Alley list were people that purchased it. So you could have AAA creators who purchased a spot in Artist Alley that wouldn't be listed as a guest. And I didn't figure that out until after the fact.
So you really had to go A to Z to find everybody because there wasn't a list. Okay. All right.
I have a Department of Truth #1, which is my favorite comic going on right now. The Tinian Shop exclusive variant cover that he signed because I supported him on Substack. And he sent it to me. That's a crazy expensive book. It's going for like $500 on eBay.
Wow.
But I'm
enough out of the field now. It's like, ooh, Substack, ooh, you know, Mike Tinian. I know some of what you're saying, but it's like, wow, I'm no longer encyclopedic. I can't keep up if I'm not every day buying. You know what I mean?
James Tinian's one of the big writers right now. He did Batman, Department of Truth, Something's Killing the Children.
I just read a whole bunch of those via Hoopla or Comixology or something like that. I caught up on my
such a good book. Absolutely. But Frisian did the variant cover of it, and I want to get her to sign it, and Martin Simmons, the interior artist, to sign it. And then I want to send it off to CBCS to get graded. But I didn't know she was going to be there, so I didn't bring it, and I was kicking myself the whole show. But Substack, have you heard of Substack? I think you'd get a kick out of it.
No, I have not.
Okay. Do you know, basically, you know Patreon, right?
Yes.
So it's kind of like Patreon, but instead of like having a variety of tiered rewards and stuff, it's you pay monthly or a year, and you get weekly or multiple times a week newsletters from your favorite writers and creators. just
That's
kind of
cool.
the original intention was like their thoughts and ramblings or like excerpts from what they're working on and
Yeah,
stuff.
a little access to them that the public doesn't have, if you will. You know,
I like
Exactly.
all the bonus behind the scenes DVD stuff.
like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Well,
Substack.
earlier this year, Substack spent a buttload of money, like a ridiculous amount, handing out grants to comic book creators, like top level people. Brian Michael Bendis, Brian K. Vaughan, Chip Zdarsky,
All
like
of whom I like. Very good. Okay.
yeah, Scotty Young, like
Okay.
if Scott Snyder. If you think of a high level comic book creator, odds are they at least got reached out to by Substack. And like, here's a bunch of money. This is to pay the artists or pay for what you need to make comics on our platform. They're not Substack comics. They are the creator's own comics.
Okay.
They can reprint them at the exact same time physically with whoever they want. They can literally do anything they want with the comics, and they have full rights of it. Substack just wanted to draw people to the program.
Got it.
And James Tinian said, hey, so I'm going to be doing this. I will be doing every other week an exclusive Department of Truth story on Substack. And I'm like, okay, you have my money.
Exactly. So, and just that, getting like real, you know, it's not like someone writing in their diary is not real content, but to be producing something that is their work,
Yes.
is a new department. That's very attractive. I would love to have those kinds of things. Okay.
So every Friday, every other week, he does a Department of Truth wild fictions. And kind of what it is, and I've been loving it, is case files of the paranormal things that the Department of Truth has shut down. The like Topa ideas and stuff. And what's really cool is they're taking real paranormal stuff and mixing it into this world. They've referenced people that I've done work with, Ben Radford, Greg, oh geez, now I'm blanking on his name, but people I've been on stage with and done talks with. And I'm like, so if they exist,
yes,
I'm like, if they exist in the Department of Truth universe, that means I exist in the Department of Truth universe. But and then the weeks that
I told him to contact the creator and say, hey,
I'm going to.
Yeah.
I'm going to. But and then the other week that they're not doing that, he's putting out what he calls Project Blue Book with Michael Avon Oeming. It's a comic, straight up comic that is true crime style storytelling with real life UFO encounters. And Michael Avon Oeming
work from Powers and stuff like that.
Yep.
So, and I remember him and Bendis both talking about true crime is one of the things, like when he did Jinx and various other things, that was how they got together. It wasn't about superheroes. It was about true crime and then kind of applying that to superheroes. So anyway, very cool.
So Substack sent, he said, Tinian, when he sent out the first newsletter, because I was already on his regular newsletter saying, hey, I'm going to be doing this. Everyone that signs up the first day for a year subscription will get a free variant cover from his archives signed by him. So I'm like, okay. I signed up within 10 minutes of him sending the email out.
That's very cool.
So that was my gift.
It sounds like, I mean, that sounds like MacArthur Genius Grants, or it sounds like the Medicis in, you know, Renaissance times. Like I know you're a great artist, a great creator. I don't care what you do. I just want you to not have to worry about the real world as much, so you can devote your time to creating beautiful things for the world. You know, so that's a very interesting and noble thing for Substack to be doing. And of course, there's money involved, but it really is. I love that idea. When I first started to make okay money, that's really one of the things I wanted to do was, how do I free the people whose work I love from the shackles of got to make rent, got to get food. I really wanted to be a Medici and be able to say, and not in the way of, and now I control your work and it must be about the church. You know what I mean? It wasn't a matter of control. It was a matter of sponsorship and respect for people that, boy, they should make better music. They should make more music of the kind they make and not have to worry about too much of the real world.
There's a
So
lot
that's
of authors
very cool.
that I know that use Patreon and Substack
Yes.
to do those things. And there's another one, InfoStack, that they use, and Medium with
And I've contributed a
articles.
lot through like Indiegogo and Kickstarter and various other crowdsourcing type things. But most of those are project based, kind of a one shot. I'll
Right.
produce this in the next 3 months, 6 months, and you sponsor me in getting that done. The ongoing sponsorship is very interesting too. You know what I mean? That they can commit to, I am going to indeed put out a book a week, a song a week, a short story every 2 weeks, whatever else it might be. That's pretty cool.
From the business standpoint, a lot of the authors will get a list, get their people, then they'll do a Kickstarter and have everyone push it. And they get, they're probably going to make the book anyway, but this basically pays for it ahead of time. And then they still put it out. So it's like a normal book, but then they get all these people and they're like, hey, by the way, I have a Patreon that I give this. I have a Substack that I give this, and they get those people signing up. So it's this continuous, because
there's a web of things that are available like that at different levels, different tiers,
right,
different focuses. Okay.
Right. Because the not the general thinking, but the group I'm usually around, and the thinking goes that if you have 1,000 fans that are like your biggest fans that love your stuff, and that you can make a living off of that, not gouging them, not, exploiting them, but that they're happy with what they get. It's a win-win. They love the entertainment that you give them, and you give them more, and they're willing to, give you those couple bucks, and 1,000 people giving you a couple bucks a month will give you a full-time living. That's the thinking. So
yeah, I know I've read books and articles about, what's the future of, I don't know, commerce, the internet. It's not about things necessarily, and it's about experiences and access in a way that you separate yourself from the regular crowd. And it doesn't have to be VIP status. It really can be, wow, 100,000 people might give $10 to this. Like, I don't know, how did Louis C.K. get rich? Because he sold the special for like $5, but 200,000 people bought it, and suddenly he's a millionaire. That's kind of a cool multiplier effect.
Right.
You know what I mean? Not outrageously priced, so it's not really high level access, but it is, wow, a little bit of popularity, a little bit of word of mouth, and you can not only get money for that project, you can say, now I have a buffer, so I can work on what I really want to work on next, instead of always having to be, who's going to pay me to do this? And then there's concessions, there's notes that are given you as to, oh, we don't like that word, you're gonna have to take that out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Colin, before we jump over to topic 2, what's your wrap up there for C2E2?
Oh, it's a great show. If you're into comics, you should check it out.
There you go.
So,
I had a great time.
I've
on the
never
drive,
been, and I can't believe it. In my mind, I always thought it was more of a toy and peripheral to comic show instead of being deeply comics, like you're saying. How did I not know that? I can't believe it.
Alan,
I left Chicago, and so that's a big thing. If I would have been in Chicago at the time, I would have gone. But now that it's a 6-hour drive, there's an overhead associated with it, and I just didn't bother to investigate enough.
You should go to Chicago sometime, Alan. It's a nice city. It's a good place to visit. You wouldn't want to live there.
There were like a dozen people that all they sold were Funko Pops, and there were some toy people too. But I'd say that about half of the vendors were mostly vendors.
Paradise for
which
me.
was
That's
great.
Fantastic. Okay.
I think there was a good mix of everything that made it a good show, because comic book people are into things that aren't just comics,
right.
And I think this had a really good mix of that. There was something for pretty much everybody, and there was plenty for comic book people.
So is it like a 3 or 4 day show? How long does it run?
It runs normally the weekend that it goes. It runs Friday to Sunday.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and it generally is open like 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. and then a couple hours earlier they close on Sunday, so they can get everybody out in time
to catch their flights and pack their stuff up and everything. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I on the drive home, I talked to Adam, my boss, and I was like, so what can I do to make sure I come next year?
See, exactly that. If you're, working the booth is a small concession to be there. You're in the place,
Yeah.
you're on site every time
Yeah.
that's very cool. Okay.
Where
Was it? Was it in Rosemont or downtown or McCormick Place? Where was it?
It was the McCormick Center.
Okay, got it. Okay. Because that has
Um,
huge exhibition halls, and okay.
Yes.
I've been to many
They
cons there.
we basically took up the whole building, I think, with C2E2,
Okay.
or at least the
Yes.
vast majority of the building.
Yeah.
So this year was our best year, even though attendance was lower than normal, which was really cool. I told Adam that it was because I was there.
There you go. See, let that buzz around in his head for next year. So, okay. All right.
Okay,
So-
before you go, Colin, we'll get you in on this too. Jumping. And this is spoilers, so turn it off if you don't want spoilers, but Spider-Man. What'd you think, Alan?
So, boy, I loved it.
Oh man,
Like, it
so
is
good.
really wish fulfillment if you're a fan not only of the movies but of the comic book world, because it really does, like, some part of what I've been seeing for the multiverse is they get sloppy. They get to have any variation that they want and just say, oh, that's a different universe. In this case, it was beautifully done to have the different, and here's the biggest spoiler, the different Spider-Men
Yeah.
and the different villains that have in the movies fought each of them, and in the comic books a long history of that, to integrate all that together so that it really was like a team effort of Spider-Man, and to have all the sense of humor that Marvel movies did, and fantastic special effects, the incredible kinetic 3 web swingers going amongst, here's the sand electric storm with a tornado and the buildings collapse, the Statue of Liberty is collapsing
With Captain America's shield.
Exactly. It just was fantastic. And the way that so there was a while where Spider-Man was not well integrated into the Marvel universe because he was Sony instead of the Marvel universe. And now that they've done all the right things with the Avengers to bring him in and these movies, it was so true to everything that makes Spider-Man good, that it's not about his spiderness, it's about he's a decent guy, and he's willing to make incredible sacrifices because, sorry if I tear up, that with great power comes great responsibility, and he actually acts like it instead of just saying
yes. And we talked about that. Yeah,
exactly. It's fantastic to see someone be heroic that isn't, hey, I happen to be strong as a god, and so it's kind of easy for me to be heroic. But instead, he has so many problems in his life and so much difficulty he has to go through, and he still steps up. Why does the world need that? So sorry.
From my viewpoint, and Spider-Man has always been my favorite. I mean, just hands down, when I was a kid to now, good, bad, whatever. I don't think they could have made the movie any better. I think they did it just right. There's a lot of chances they could have screwed something up. They could have made it horrible, and I don't think they did. Now, is it saying it's going to win every Academy Award and be in the number one film of the top 100 films of all time? It's not meant to be. But for a Spider-Man film, it hit every point and it was done well. They didn't have, it was so many villains. We've seen it before. When there's that many villains, the story gets muddled and it sucks. They did not do that. It was hit right on with 3 Spider-Men. They could have really messed it up, but they put in the story what fit each of them and worked together. It wasn't just cardboard cutout Spider-Man. It was the characters. There was only one thing I'll talk about in a minute, but there wasn't hardly anything of this. It was 2 hours and 40 minutes or something like that. And I did not go, oh my God, how much longer is this movie at all?
Not a wasted moment, no drag time. Honestly, the fact that they got great actors to come back, and instead of worrying about like how much screen time do I get and kind of elbowing each other out of the way, that they were so decent, like Spider-Man, to say, in service to the story, in service to, I'm part of this universe that I was privileged to be invited into, to see Tobey Maguire come back after not having played Spider-Man for 15 years, 20
At
years
least.
now. It was just the coolest thing to that people left their egos, and all of the villains had arcs. It wasn't only, hey, that's someone to biff bam pow, beat them up and they're leeringly evil. That there really was depth to the Green Goblin and Dr. Octopus and even the Sandman. You know what I mean? That what's his biggest motivation? To take care of his daughter. He's not a criminal just because I like to steal things. So that again, Marvel has always been great about that kind of complexity and that humanizing both heroes and villains. And this movie just shines with all of that.
Yeah.
Even
Now,
Jake Jameson, for it's kind of funny. He might be the most villainous thing in the movie, and he's just a guy, but he's an obsessive, crazy, awful guy.
right.
And the damage that he can do. You know what I mean? That it's not a matter of can you push over a building? No, but you sure can sully a reputation beyond what anybody would think is decent.
Right.
So very, very well. Yeah.
Colin and I disagree on the past Spider-Man and the past Spider-Man movies. I didn't really care for Garfield as much. I did like Amazing Spider-Man 2. I thought it was a pretty good movie, but I never liked him as Spider-Man as much. I love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. But I think that they upped the level of my awareness and appreciation of Garfield as Spider-Man in this movie, more so than they did in his separate movies. I think
way to put that. I've liked them all for different reasons, and yet I don't know that I have a favorite. It was just very cool to see what each of them brought to the role, and yet you're right. Garfield absolutely didn't. He wasn't like the lesser of the three Spider-Man. He actually, his version was important to the movie, the way that he acted. Anyway, the discussion, for instance, of who's got artificial web shooters,
yes,
who's got actually like that's biological. It's like, where does that come from? What
yeah.
is that?
Yeah, that was so great because I mean that's one of the things with Spider-Man is Peter is a scientist. He's smart. So that's why he built the web shooters. But then it's like, well, wait a second. Why the hell are you calling yourself Spider-Man if you can't make webs? Who cares if you stick the wall? You could have been Sticky Man or something. It's that what do you do thing, and people have discussed and argued. So they covered it all in this with the changes to the Spider-Man, and it was done well. Colin,
What do you think, Colin? Exactly.
Yeah, sorry, we've been excluding you.
No,
No, I disagree. What are you saying? No,
yeah, so I'm gonna be. I liked it more than I thought I would going in because I do not like the Tobey Maguire movies. I think they're lame.
I'm going to mute him. I'm turning him off right now.
Well, okay.
No.
I think my biggest problem with them is I think Alfred Molina was a great Doc Ock. I love the actor who plays Green Goblin,
Dafoe.
but
Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe. But I don't like that suit, and I don't like really where they were going. I don't know. I wasn't the biggest fan of some of the stuff with him in that movie. I thought he was really interesting in the role, but I don't know. It just didn't work super well for me. And
now,
Tobey
let me
Maguire,
interject real quick. So you have grown up in an awareness state with Marvel MCU. So your expectations of superhero movies is completely different than like ours was. And I'm not saying you're wrong.
Sure.
But
even as a kid, I didn't like those movies.
Okay,
when it was the only superhero movies I had.
That's fair. But I will say the storylines for those movies, looking at them now, they're maybe not holding up quite as well as they were 20 years ago, which is fine. But I did think I liked in this movie that they kept the outfits the same. They didn't update them. This is what
they did though.
They did.
He wasn't wearing. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't wearing the outfit after the first time.
Well, right.
Doc
He
got the red things.
He had the hoodie and stuff, but overall, they didn't try and update everything. And I think William Dafoe as Green Goblin was fantastic. That they did really well in this movie, bringing him out. They did update him as a personality and character.
He was better.
He was great in the movie, and so
in the previous one, he wasn't as good. This movie, he was much more Norman Osborn and like not mentally well, and that they really showed that if you're a sociopath, you don't have a revelation like Dr. Octopus does when his arms stop talking to him, that maybe he's really a decent guy and a scientist, and Green Goblin doesn't have any cure in that way. He really is multiple personality nut, maybe megalomania.
That shit crazy.
Yeah, he's crazy. And that makes him all the more dangerous because he's so unpredictable because of that, or
So like
because of that. Yeah.
Well, when I was seeing the trailers and everything, like there was nothing that was really getting me crazy excited. I don't care for the MCU movies because Peter in that seems he's Iron Lad. He's not Peter Parker. It doesn't feel like him at all. Peter's always been very self-built. He's always stood on his own as his own character. And in the MCU movies, he's relied too much on Iron Man building his suit for him, giving him his web shooters, all of that stuff. And even when he did build his suit at the end of Far From Home, he used Stark technology for it. So I wasn't super pumped walking into the movie. I liked it more than I thought I would. I think part of my enjoyment of it was seeing Andrew Garfield in the role again, because I think he's the best Spider-Man we've ever gotten on live action. And I thought he was a joy in this. They didn't change his character a whole lot. And I was worried about that. I was worried they were going to change him a bit to make him feel more in line with the more G-Shocks type of Peter Parker that the other two are, because he's always been weirder and a bit more rough around the edges than the others. But my favorite part of the movie, which really isn't much part of the movie, Daredevil comes back, and I couldn't be happier about
Charlie
that.
Cox
I was
as
losing
Murdoch,
my
exactly
freaking mind.
That's
The
right.
second he set down the cane, I was like, oh my God, I know who that is.
And that's a great example of them really getting things right, because the Netflix Marvel shows have kind of been pushed off to the side and forgotten. They weren't as good as they could have been. There was things people would wish better about them. Now,
that
I think
first season of Alias was fantastic. That
Yeah.
is Jessica Jones. Sorry.
yes.
Oh man.
And I think all 3 seasons of Daredevil, I have a very unpopular opinion, which is that Daredevil is the best live action comic book thing we have ever gotten, period. Which I know is very against a lot of people's opinions.
Well, but those shows, I think, were good test grounds for what we're getting now on Disney Plus, because the stuff on Disney Plus is just over the top, really good, like movie quality stories and stuff. Good.
The Hawkeye sequence was great. WandaVision was great. Hawkeye. Oh
my God. We'll have to get back to Hawkeye. Hold on. But so bringing the characters in shows that, okay, we still know they exist. And I don't think their stories like mess up anything in the MCU. I mean, they're kind of off on their own, so they can bring that stuff in and bring those characters in. And now we have Kingpin. There's our Hawkeye coming up,
right.
But
exactly.
they didn't screw it up by putting long drawn out court battle and Daredevil at court and all this stuff he was in for 2 minutes. That's all we needed.
Exactly. Just a taste of their, and actually I what they did make perfect sense to me. If you're going to have the Avengers, where it's this big galactic menace, you don't have the guys that fight in Hell's Kitchen on the streets as necessarily part of that conflict. You know what I mean? There's different scales and different focuses for what the heroes are about. And when you're going cosmic, you don't drag in the guys who it's in a much more personal scale. So
the one time Daredevil went to space, he almost killed him and She-Hulk because they told him to press a red button and he couldn't tell which one was red. That's a real comic book story.
So this is my personal writer opinion. And I told Colin this, and it's nowhere a criticism and nowhere saying this ruined the movie or anything. But from the writer point, I was thinking about the part where Mary Jane falls. Now, every movie has some girlfriend of Peter's falling off of something that he has to save her. He either doesn't and she dies, or he does. Most of the time he doesn't and she dies. Right. So, you're all going, oh my God, it's happening again, which is kind of like, come on, get something new in one way. But I think what they should have done is earlier in the movie, to make it that more drama, is something about where she does fall and he just catches her. And she's like, well, what if you're not there to catch me? He's like, I will always be there to catch, one of those typical Peter type of conversations. And she's like really worried about it. All these dangerous things are happening. What if you can't save me? Am I putting myself in danger? And now here we go to, and then that would make her character a little better because she still chooses to put herself in danger, knowing that she has no powers and Peter may not save her. So there's that, helping her. So then when she does fall and he can't reach her, it's like, oh my God, it was foreshadowing. There go, kill Mary Jane. And then Garfield swoops in to save her. Probably something earlier with him of, I've been unsure about being Spider-Man or something that fit his character.
He said that stuff though.
Okay. So that would have fit perfect with him saving. And, that's just the writer thing in me.
Because he talked about losing Gwen and that kind of lost hope with him with being Spider-Man.
Exactly. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I thought that was so much the movie about what the multiverse is about is all the possibilities that we make and that we create new universes when we do so. And that in that set of multiverses, there's not just one reality where it's only tragedy, there's a chance for redemption. And so I thought that so much of them talking about how they've had Gwen's or Mary Jane's in their life and they lived or they died or they stayed together or they broke up, that they really gave each of those characters a chance to see not only their reality, but what would it be like, how wonderful it would be if I really did save her, that her neck didn't snap or things like that. And so I thought that was incredibly powerful because it wasn't only about that movie in the way that you're talking about, that writerly they could have set something up earlier in the movie. I thought they set it up from the entire array of Spider-Man movies. And I was very satisfied with, wow, they let him win. You know what I mean?
I think in the whole big action scene, it kind of lost the momentous as much attention as it could have gotten. Maybe it seemed like they did it and it's over and they moved on without pointing out that, the impact. Maybe that was it as much.
I can see that, and it's not so much an Easter egg. One of the things I've always loved about comic books and that I get a lot out of is because I remember everything. And so when they bring a villain back that hasn't been around for 100 issues, which is like, 8 years in comic book time, it's still very satisfying to be like, oh, this writer didn't forget about the Molecule Man. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? He said that, and I love when they make those references and have those long-term plans from some DC or Marvel getaway weekend where they say, we're going to lay the groundwork for this to be resolved 6 movies from now, 100 issues from now. And yet they really are good at building to that. And then for the people that are like me, that get all the details, not all, of course, most of them, it's very satisfying to see. I kind of had a feel for that. I kind of saw that coming. It's nice when the puzzle comes together. You know what I mean? I love that. So,
and you got to admit, they did really well during the whole battle. First of all, the cap shield on Statue of Liberty was really great.
A good artifact to throw into the whole mix.
Yes.
Exactly.
But then when the Spider-Men aren't working together and bad things are happening, it's like, that's typical Peter. Things go wrong. But then when they're like, wait a second, we're individuals. We don't know how to work as a group. We need to. And they said, that's what we're going to do. And then they showed all 3 of them swinging, and the scene where Spider-Man was up in front of the moon and it looked just like the Spider-Verse and he went down. I think that was their nod to Miles. They did mention, well, there's got to be a black Spider-Man somewhere.
And that, Jackson, that one thing I thought was missing was I really thought they were going to find some way to introduce the fact that in another multiverse, it is going to be Miles Morales, because I thought they've got to be bringing that in, and maybe the fact that they introduced the multiverse, they're going to let that stew for a while instead of being obvious about it.
Right. And I think it was fine without actually putting somebody, because if they put Miles in now, well, it might not even have a movie or be in another movie for 5 or 6 years. So if they get an 8-year-old kid, he's going to be 15. So you don't want to necessarily do that.
Another thing I loved, so I don't know the name, I don't know the work of the 2 main writers of the movie. Like, there's various other people that have contributed to all kinds of movies. These guys had not heard of them before, but they were very canny, kind of like Kevin Feige is it Feige? Feige, thank you. Overall, they just have a love and a feel for what makes the Marvel Universe cool. So Spider-Man's fighting Doc Ock. And even though you said kind of Iron Lad, a little bit too much the Stark tech, but to see him come up over the wall with his own extended arms, now he's not only his limbs against Doc Ock with the extra limbs, that he's got his own set of extra arms too. I thought that was a really cool,
and it was so typical Peter, because then the car's getting beat around. He's like, sorry, ma'am, hold on, wait, well, you know, and now Colin, what'd you think of Aunt May getting hurt and dying?
Oh, I didn't like that at all.
I know you didn't.
That seemed necessary somehow, didn't it? Like they didn't.
Well,
anyway.
I agree.
My whole thing with it was, you know, everyone's like, oh, we finally got the great power, great responsibility, Uncle Ben speech. And I'm like, but if you remember the whole discussion about Spider-Man being brought into Civil War, everyone was like, thank God we never got the great responsibility Uncle Ben speech. And now people are celebrating that we finally got it in the wrong way. You know, I did not like it at all. I'm like, he's been Spider-Man for like 4 years already. He should have had that discussion 4 years ago. He can't already have been Spider-Man and had that, because that's what makes him Spider-Man. It's just this dissonance that really bugged me.
And I kind of agree, and I agree with you, Al, that it was unnecessary. They didn't do anything to set it up. It was just like they seemed to do it to try and make it really dramatic.
And actually, I thought she was okay. I thought they're going to bring in the ambulance and she'll go away. And then the fact that she's actually injured internally, I guess, and is, fading even while she's talking to him. I don't know. I hope they find a way to bring her back. Not in a Doctor Strange screw up the universe way, but that's its own. I've had a number of people that say, you guys are missing the whole point. Benedict Cumberbatch is in the movie. For those people, ladies, who are very much attracted, it was very cool to have Spider-Man bring in another major Marvel character, and that be kind of a prelude to the multiverse of madness that we're going to see from Doctor Strange. That whole idea of, the multiverse is tricky because it's the butterfly wings thing, right? You don't know how much a little change over here is going to affect a whole bunch of other alternative realities. And now Doctor Strange is going to have to contend with that. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do.
Yeah.
I've always thought Doctor Strange was great because instead of being really grounded in reality, anything can happen, literally. And it's cool to see who keeps their head in a situation like that. While reality is shifting under your feet and there's big mouths with fangs floating in midair, old Steve Ditko art, who has the mental toughness to be able to say, I can still cope with getting back home somehow, getting back to my reality. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do.
I agree. Agreed. All right. Well, hey, we've been on like an hour and a half, so that's about our limit. That people are like, okay, I'm done with these nerds.
This was honestly, thank you so much, Colin, for all of your C2E2, and especially for joining in the comic book discussion. We often jump around multiple topics. This might be one of the ones where we really focused and stayed with something because there was so much to talk about. I am so happy to be alive. It really is the golden age now of comic books being made into movies, because as I've done at any number of my lectures, you just couldn't do it for a long time. You didn't have the special effects. You didn't have the costumes. It didn't have the obvious zipper. You know what I mean? The fact that you can really make Superman fly and Spider-Man swing and Thor bring down the lightning. It's very, very cool that I'm alive to see these things I've loved all my life become, quotes, real. You know what I mean? To see them very well portrayed. And so I will be at C2E2 next year. COVID notwithstanding, we'll see what happens there. But
it's going to be in August next year, just so you know.
Oh, you mean my birthday month? Oh no, what a dangerous time!
Like the first week in August, I think is when it's going to be.
Oh no!
So wait, before we go, I got two things. So book of the week. I don't know if you've knew this one. Our friend Tom Zoller. He did the cover for my Town Magician, and you've played trivia and stuff with him.
Yes.
Great artist.
He was at C2E2.
I mentioned the book with tie-in, exactly. Very cool. And so he's got a book out.
Yes. So this is it. Cupid's Arrows. It's kind of a Men in Black X-Files type agency made up of the Cupids that will shoot their arrows for true love, for couples that are destined to change the universe. So it's not everybody, it's only ones that are in the book that list so this is, I did the Kickstarter. This is a thick book that he did. He wrote, he drew, hardback, wonderful book. So I'll put a link to that. I love his stuff. This love or Cupid's arrows. What was the other one he did? Loving Capes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I
That
saw
was
one. Not only
fantastic.
for pub quiz, because I met him at a Comic-Con. It's like, we know each other. It's
Right.
very cool. Like when you see your teacher at the grocery store, what are you doing here? This isn't
Right.
reality. So,
Okay, so I got a trivia of the week for you, Alan.
oh, let's see. Colin can chime in too. Okay.
Yeah, so there's a lot of Christmas movies right now. And one of the newer classics that's very popular is Elf.
Right.
It's become one of those that people want to see every year, and it's a tradition now. Well, the head elf in Elf is Ming Ming, and the actor that plays Ming Ming was also in another very eponymous Christmas movie in its time. Do you know who that was?
So bear with me. We just saw Elf the musical this last weekend at the Beck Center. So I had Elf kind of come back into my consciousness. So I have maybe a little bit better shot. I'm trying to remember. Ed Asner played Santa Claus. Was it Bob Newhart that played?
No.
Okay, so I don't remember then. Head elf.
Yes. He was in it. Colin, do you know?
Is it Jim
Yeah.
Carrey from Grinch?
Yeah, I do know. I overheard you telling people, so I'm not going to say.
Oh, no,
I wouldn't have known if I hadn't heard you already.
Okay.
Oh.
Is he under so much makeup that I wouldn't be able to pick him out even if I knew? Is he like
He aged.
Oh,
You wouldn't be. It's hard to tell because he aged.
How about Macaulay Culkin, like from Home Alone, becoming this?
You're getting warmer.
Ooh. So the Home Alone movies. Let's see. How about Kevin from Kids in the Hall? I'm trying to think of the two bandits. Was it Joe Pesci? Was it?
Oh no, that's a good one.
Okay,
because
he's kind of elfin, if you will. Sorry, Joe. Okay.
So
further back than Home Alone, further back, like
it's further back.
Okay. Wow.
You're getting warm. You're getting
the kid
warm.
from Miracle on 34th Street, whoever that little
girl. That's a little too far.
A little too far.
Okay.
So,
okay.
I'll tell you who it is, and it's wonderful. You got to go watch it.
Okay.
The character of Ming Ming in Elf was played by Peter Billingsley from A Christmas Story.
Oh man, you can put your eye, you can shoot your eye out. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a very good bit of trivia. I must have seen that like in the credits and go, is that it?
Right.
You kind of wonder if there's not many Billingsleys running around. And
Right. And
okay.
and Gina and I did go up to Lorraine Palace and watch A Christmas Story. And
I think I saw a post from that. Okay.
I realized that I haven't watched that movie in many, many years, and I don't know why. It is so good. If you like Forrest Gump, Tom Hanks, this is that type of movie, and it holds up today. It's set in the 50s, so it's like a period piece.
Right.
So, but the way it's done in the story, it still holds up. It's still funny. There were kids in pajamas watching it, laughing. There were 80-year-olds watching it.
Wonderful.
So
I agree. It is a great movie. It's got perfect scenes. It's got a whole series of great scenes. It's got Darren McGavin. It's got, you know what I mean?
Kolchak.
Kind of like Sandlot. You know what I mean? All kinds of kids that grew up to be in other movies and stuff. So that's very cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's our trivia. Christmas trivia.
Let's see. So my recommendations real quick. I've started a series called Sandman Slim.
Yes.
By I think it's Richard Kudry, and there's actually like a dozen in the series, and it wasn't on my radar until just recently. But of course, I dove into the first one, and it's like supernatural urban crime fiction. Of course, the guy is he escapes from hell. He's a Nephilim who is the product of an angel mating with a human, so he's got some powers, but not powerful as an angel. They are so wonderfully vulgar and iconoclastic. Like the guy writes really floridly and vulgarly, and I laugh out loud at any number of descriptions he has for just how badly this guy was killed, just how terrible the stench is of something coming from hell and stuff like that. So if you're looking for that kind of thing, kind of like it's like urban supernatural, like who does it? Jim Butcher does it well, and Benedict Jacka with the Alex Veras books did it well. This is that, plus throw in the Executioner, because there's a lot of killing. There's a whole bunch of deathy stuff. I also recently discovered a thing called Once and Future. It's
that's a great book.
Oh my God, it's fantastic. I have Comixology and Hoopla, so I regularly am looking for what's coming out now because I'm not buying regularly now. I'm looking for what the coolest new things are, and totally stumbled onto this one. Kieran Gillen and
Yes.
Dan Mora, the illustrator. I don't know their work real well, but then I realized I've been reading something from Dan Mora, and I really like his artwork. The overall story is so King Arthur is supposed to come back when Britain is at its greatest time of need. You know, there's a particular phrase that goes with that's when the once and future king will return. Well, what if King Arthur coming back is not the solution to that, but he's the one that makes it that you're in the once and the greatest time of need? What if he's really the child slayer, the bad guy that he also did some horrible things while he was king, and they make a lot out of that.
Wow.
And so it's there's references to the Knights of the Round Table, and that they might also have become corrupted over time. Like, it's really, really well done. And I love things where I know the Mort d'Arthur, the whole Arthurian cycle pretty well, and the way that they break the rules and change things, but still make it so that you can guess what might be coming up, but then you're continually surprised. I love being surprised. When you've read a lot, you have the standard 36 plots, and usually within the first 5 minutes, you're like, oh, this is plot number 22. I love it when I get surprised. And so this book is that. It's really well done, and I can't wait to read more. Colin, you know it. Okay.
Yeah, I've been reading it. It's been a lot of fun. You should read pretty much anything Kieran Gillen's ever written.
Okay.
He's one of my favorite writers right now. He did an excellent run on Star Wars and Darth Vader. That is one of some of the best stuff ever written in the Star Wars universe.
That's what I tend to do is I find a new guy and it's like I devour everything they did because then I trust them, you know? So anyway.
He's doing Eternals right now. And Eternals are my favorite thing Kirby ever did. And this is the best run that's ever happened.
Wow, fantastic.
And he did this book with, you got to read it. It is so good. It is one of my favorites of all time.
And actually, I've read all those. There's like 4 volumes.
Oh, okay.
Now, and I didn't connect the name. You know, sometimes names don't stick, oddly, because I usually do remember, but I really liked those. And I kept finding it at the library and going, I've never heard of this before. Let's give it a try. And then I'm like, you know, Colleen and I often end the day reading in bed, and I'll be like, let me just give you this little bit of dialogue because it's so perfect. You know what I mean? Yes. Comic book ease that is just so perfectly written, and I love that title as well. So I didn't realize how much I was already a fan until I saw the reference to the wicked and the divine. So I knew that part exactly. Yes. Okay,
and
very
then
good.
Dan Mora is doing the art for Detective Comics right now, and I swear that dude was born to draw Batman. It's some of the most perfect stuff I've seen of Batman, and he's going to do a World's Finest series with Mark Waid in March that I'm very excited about.
I think he also worked on Black Hammer, which I discovered, and that's like wow, this guy, someone that can do kind of gold and silver age artwork, but modernized slightly, but still, you know what I mean? When you can do modern primitivism, there's a couple of people that are really good at that. That it's not as finely detailed, so it looks kind of corny and old style, like we mentioned. Michael Avon Emming does that really well. I really kind of like where I usually like ultra realistic artwork, and where someone does a cartoony style that's still very effective. I'm like, how did he sneak past me? Usually I dismiss the cartoony stuff if it's not a cartoon, and yet it's in service to the plot. I don't know. I like Dan Mora's art, and I will look for more of him as well. So very cool.
If you like Dan Mora too, you should look up Evan Doc Shaner.
Okay.
He just finished a 12-issue Strange Adventures series about Adam Strange with Tom King, one of my favorite writers.
Absolutely.
And his stuff feels a lot like Doc Shaner, or it feels a lot like Dan Mora's, but a little less modern. It is quintessentially Silver Age.
Okay. By the way, you mentioned him earlier. I've never warmed to Scotty Young.
Really?
Honestly, I just somehow his stuff is a little bit too exaggerated or a little bit too childish, and I dismiss it because it just doesn't work for me. I know other people really love it. And yet, it's kind of funny. I really don't mean to ever diss anybody. I really always want to be about who I like versus who I dislike. But because you mentioned him, it's like, I don't know what it is, but that his doesn't work for me. Whenever he does an alternative variant cover of various different things, that's the one I would never fucking buy. I don't want that in my collection. I think it's silly.
Have you read his Oz stuff?
I don't think so. No.
because he did an adaptation of Oz. It's very,
fantastic.
the art is very different. He has this like chibi style that he does now that I'm
Okay.
not super crazy keen on, like the variant covers that you were talking about.
Okay.
But some of the stuff in the beginning of his career, before Marvel contracted him to draw every character ever as a cute little cartoon,
Right.
it was
Funko Pop, you know.
yes, it was very stylistic, but
Okay.
It's
it
very
really
good.
worked, especially with Oz. He's
Interesting.
also
Okay.
working with an artist right now on a lot of creator-owned stuff called Jorge Corona, and Corona kind of keeps a lot of Scotty Young's feeling of his older work, but makes it his own. You should check that stuff out too. They did a series that I absolutely adore called The Me You Love in the Dark. It's a 5-issue miniseries, just ended from Image Comics. It was amazing.
Okay.
It was one of those books that every month that it came out, I would recommend it to people. So we had to keep ordering the previous issues so people could catch up.
Got it.
And
I'm taking a couple notes here because, you know, I've often been the guy that tells, oh, you haven't heard of this one, but you really like it. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that you have the modernity, the current stuff coming out, because you work at a comic book store and you really are able to say, these are the diamonds amongst all the regular stuff. I really
If you want,
Yeah.
I can start sending you like, hey, here's my recommendations of stuff that I happen
would
to
love
read.
that. You know,
Colin,
Okay.
you should start a Substack thing and I'll subscribe.
Well, Colin, send it to me and we'll put something on the website. You know, the weekly comic recommendations or something.
Okay.
Cool.
That would be cool.
As I discover them, I'm happy to crow about like what I just said. You know, hey, I just finished the Alex Vera series and now here's Once and Future. And when I find something that isn't just, okay, the next in the series and it's really good. I just read the latest Spencer book by Ace Atkins because Robert P. Parker died and it was good, but it's not like, hey, everybody read this. When something really is like that it stands out like Once and Future did, I really want to tell everybody, you know, this is how good comic books can be. This is really good.
And that's, you know, I find that interesting. You say that about Scotty Young, and it just shows everybody's like something different and there's reasons to like. That's why this modern culture of, oh, you don't like what I like, well, you're stupid, you suck, and this is why you're wrong. You know, that's because I love Scotty Young. I hate Fairyland. And I didn't know quite what it was, but I'm like, oh, that looks kind of cute. I started reading it. I'm like, oh my God, this is so great. I loved it, just devoured it. And I, you know, Colin told me free comic book day. Hey, Scotty Young has a t-shirt. I'm like, give it to me. I want one. You know, I really like his art. I actually thought of trying to commission him for something, but he doesn't do personal commissions anymore.
Okay. And what you just said, maybe the way to close today's thing is, boy, is that true about matters of taste. I've had so many discussions of this isn't a matter of fact, of right or wrong or true or false. It's a matter of taste. If you don't like ketchup on your hot dog, it's not that suddenly I'm a bad guy because I like ketchup. You know, you don't have to savage me over your taste. And yet people do.
Right.
You know, they tell you about this is the one good Spider-Man. No, there's 3. You know, it's weird to have people be so, like, I don't know, dismissively opinionated about things that I wish that they would just say, to each their own. Everybody gets their own favorites.
And appreciate why somebody likes or doesn't like something, because that could give you a deeper understanding of why you like something, or help pick out new things that you would like. Say, oh, you know what? That's a good point as to why I don't like that. So now I can evaluate better these other things as to whether I'll like them or not.
That's a great, it's not only a matter of awareness of how they're thinking, but how you're thinking. And that sometimes when you're like, well, I don't know, I just like it. When someone says, well, if you did know, what would you say?
Right.
Then you really have to, well, so what is it? What is it in my background? What is it in my, I like these colors. I like this, whatever else it might be. That's, I don't know why I like the color orange, and yet I really do. And so, but why would that be? Because it's energetic, because it's associated with flavors that I like, or whatever else it might be. But even that is not, sometimes, you know, there's, wow. Next time we'll talk about Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance.
Oh, yes.
Reduction versus quality, and how sometimes when you try to get to here's the 4 facts that lead to this one conclusion, you can't do that. The conclusion stands by itself, and reducing it to these individual factors, that doesn't explain it. It actually weakens the argument. It degrades the why of it, if you will. And that's very different frames of thought for whether you're an anthropologist or whether you're a statistician or whether you're, you know, I mean, can you add this up to get to the right solution? sometimes that works and sometimes it absolutely doesn't.
Right. All right. Before we go, I got a new desktop plaything to show.
I gotta leave. I gotta get ready for work. I'm late.
Thanks, Colin.
I had fun. Thanks.
Thank you very much for being our guest. Okay.
So this is Bram Stoker with a little Dracula book.
I was going to say Tesla, but now that I see the Dracula, okay.
So him and Stephen King keep me inspired right here.
Let's see, what can I show off today? Here's December 23rd in my puzzle a day that I'm still, Colleen just got one as well. And so she's been mentioning that she's been getting them done. And I'm like, wow, I don't know that many people that are as into puzzles as I am. So to find that Colleen is enjoying is like, well, that's cool. Something we can share.
I saw something that made me think of you. They've got Rubik's Cubes for some reason are like having another renaissance. And I saw Rubik's Cubes out, but now they have ones that are like 6 rows square. And I'm like,
far more than that. I've seen them where they're like 20 by 20. And I'm like, that's just
insane. But I want to know the internal workings. How does that work to revolve it all? I want to see the inside.
Yeah, they got cool articles online about that, about how they first figured it out and how they've made it so that it really does work for even more facets.
Wow.
Still smoothly and stuff. It's an engineering marvel. It's really cool.
I'll have to look at that. But then they also have the 2x2. I'm like, really? Is that hard to do? Yeah. So, all right, man. Well, hey, you guys have a great Christmas.
Same for you. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. It's always a pleasure, Stephen. Yep. Take care.
Very fun. Tell Colleen Merry Christmas.
And same for Gina. Okay.
You have been listening to the Relentless Geekery podcast. Come back next week and join Alan and Stephen's conversation on geek topics of the week.